Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm wrapping up the 4 books that I read in September, and I'm happy to say that the quality of books I read overall in September was better than it has been in the last couple of months. So the first thing I read this month was Thrum by Meg Smitherman, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Bear with me, I'm struggling with words a little bit this evening. But I really ended up enjoying this. It's a horror romance, which I wasn't really sure what to expect from that combination of genres, but ultimately it really worked for me. I think that the romance elements in this book really heightened the horror elements, and I just really enjoyed the way that the relationship developed between the 2 main characters. We're following a woman whose name I actually can't remember off the top of my head right now, but she wakes up and finds out that she is the only crew member left alive on a ship in deep space, and when she sends out an SOS signal, she's not expecting to hear anything back. She's basically expecting to die in space, and then she gets a response from an entity calling itself Dorian, and things kind of go from there. I don't want to spoil this for you at all because it's very quick and easy to read. It's pretty short, and if you want to try it, I don't want to spoil any of those twists for you because I think this book went in some really interesting directions, but it definitely has this weird gothic vibe that I wasn't expecting, and I just had a lot of fun with this. I think it's a really interesting exploration of these characters, and I think it uses some horror tropes in unusual, unexpected ways, and I just had a lot of fun reading this. This was really good. The second book I ended up reading was The Examiner by Janice Hallett. This is the point at which I completely threw away my TBR. I had DNF'd 2 books at the start of the month, and I kind of threw the rest of my TBR out the window after I finished Thrum. That was the last book on my original D20 TBR, and then I just kind of mood read from that point forward. So I read The Examiner by Janice Hallett, and I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I read it while I was I started it while I was traveling, and I finished it within a day or 2 of getting home, and I just loved everything about this. This is a messy, complicated book about a bunch of weird people who are all in a Master of Arts program that's digital arts and marketing, and they all have ulterior motives for being here. And so the kind of center of the book, or the core of the book, is unraveling what are all the different reasons that these different people are here, what are the real relationships between them, and what are they all trying to accomplish through being a part of this course. And it just goes in absolutely wild directions that I could never have predicted, which is the thing that I really enjoyed about Janice Hallett's previous book, The Mysterious Case of the Alfredton Angels. I think she's really good at giving you these kind of wild twists that they don't come out of nowhere. They are foreshadowed, but you get these kind of wild twists that I feel like would be really hard to predict, but she's really good at sticking the landing on those kind of wild, over-the-top twists, and I just had a really fun time reading this. It was really enjoyable. I think that the characters are really interesting, and I enjoyed seeing all the different messy, complicated relationships that were there, and it was just a really fun time. After that, I read the one book that I read this month that I didn't love, which was Tiny Threads by Lilian Rivera. This was unfortunate. This was an arc that I had been really looking forward to. It's a horror story about a woman who moves from Jersey to California to go do her dream job working in a fashion house run by her favorite fashion designer. But when she gets there, things turn out to be quite sinister, and things are clearly not right in both the fashion house and her apartment, and she starts to kind of spiral. So the premise of this was really interesting and I think was really promising, but ultimately this book just bites off way more than it can chew, and it just is trying to do too many different things and then doesn't really connect them very well. So it just feels really messy and disjointed, and it feels like there's a lot of elements that don't really develop in any meaningful way. Samara is an alcoholic, and that doesn't really go much of anywhere, and she doesn't really develop any meaningful relationships with anybody. I think there's kind of one friendship she forms that I kind of liked, but it's really the only relationship of any kind that we see her form with anybody else. There's also a multiple different discussions happening that feel like they should be related, but just don't ever really get connected in a satisfying way. And I ultimately felt like it didn't make sense for it to be set in a fashion house, or for the central character, who besides Samara, to be that central character, because ultimately that character wasn't important in any way for the horror that was happening, and it just felt like it was disconnected. All the pieces felt like they had not been connected together properly. So it was a lot of really interesting ideas, but just didn't work for me in the execution, which I'm really sad about because I was really excited for this one. However, the next book I read, the final book I read in September, was a book I picked up on a whim. This is The Pale House Devil by Richard Kadrey, and I loved this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one's very short, and that is the main problem that I had with it, is I think it needed to be longer because the last half of it feels very rushed, and the first half is a delight. I loved everything about the first half. However, the first half happens, and it's not until you get to the halfway point that the actual premise starts to take place. But this is following Ford and Newland, who are mercenaries or hitmen, kind of. They call themselves mercenaries, but they're pretty clearly hitmen. But one of them is alive, that's Ford, and then Newland is undead. And Ford kills the dead, and Newland kills the living. And that is their shtick. And the two of them end up in kind of some hot water in New York at the beginning of the book, and then flee to California, where they are hired to kill the Devil of Pale House. And that's the premise that we get, and it doesn't really take place until about halfway through the book. That said, I really enjoyed what happens in the first half. There's a lot of almost this, like, buddy road trip kind of element to it that I really enjoyed. They form a friendship with another character that I thought was really fun, and I really appreciated how much they like take her seriously and respect her abilities. It's just really interesting because it's so much about the relationships between these people, more so I think than it really is about the Devil of Pale House, and I just really enjoyed these characters. They're very like deadpan and do a lot of like humor that's them like playing off each other, but doing it in a very like straight-faced way that I just found really funny, and I was not expecting to giggle my way through this book, but I absolutely did. And this is also the beginning of a series, so I'm very excited because I'm looking forward to getting more books in the series. I believe it's called The Discreet Eliminators, and I'm just really excited because I thought this was a ton of fun. It was a really wild ride, and I just really enjoyed every minute I spent reading this, which was not very many, because again, it's very short, but it arrived at my house and I had read it later that evening, so had a great time with this one. So ultimately, I did have 3 books that I really loved and one that was disappointing, but I ended up with a 4, a 4.5, and a 5-star in September, so I'm really happy with the way that my reading went in September, and I'm really looking forward to my October reading now. I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful that I'll be in the mood to read, because really, honestly, the poor quality of the stuff I had been reading previously, the fact that I wasn't having a whole lot that was sticking out to me as being really positive reading experiences, had made me not really want to pick anything up, which was a problem for me because I have all these things that I am very excited to read. So going into October, I am feeling more hopeful, and I have some things that I'm extremely excited to read for October. I have some good spooky books that I've been kind of saving up for October, despite the fact I've been reading a lot of horror this year. I do have a few that I have like specifically saved for Halloween time, so really looking forward to my October reading, feeling better coming out of September, and yeah, I think things are kind of looking up overall. So that's all I have for you today. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite thing you read in September was, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays throughout October, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.